welcome to another episode of Timeless Wealth. I'm excited today. We have Tanya joining us from the practice management team. You're one of the managers on the practice management team here at National Bank Wealth Management.
Yeah.
But we like to call you a business coach. So yeah, you're the person we come to when we're trying to figure out all sorts of stuff and best practices in business. And why we thought it would be important to have a chat with you today, particularly business owners are faced with all sorts of challenges, as we know.
Yes.
But one in particularly is, how do you find talent? How do you hire the right people? How do you know when to hire them, how to find them, and then how to retain them? Yeah. And that's a big, big challenge and a big conversation with people we're having right now. So we're excited to kind of dig into this topic and kind of hear from you some of the best practices and things we can be thinking about when we're endeavoring to grow our business.
Yeah. No, this is great. And I'm glad to be here.
Welcome, Tanya.
You know, when we look at business owners, like you said, there's a lot of questions and a lot of concerns when it comes to talent. And as business owners, we're not really equipped with how do we hire and how do we integrate? Like, it's just not something you're necessarily.
It's another hat we have to wear, right?
Exactly. And you're no different. You're a business owner yourself. So, you know, one of the key parts when you're evaluating when is the right time or what is the particular need I have, it's important that you spend enough time trying to figure that out.
Right.
Because sometimes we'll just hire because we're all busy.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're not necessarily going to make sure that you're efficient in what you do. But that you potentially could just keep adding staff on and then you end up replicating or duplicating and missing the true gaps.
Right. And then it might be easier to hire somebody, but then when you get them in, if they're not the right fit, it can actually be pretty disruptive to an overall team, right? Not fit with the culture and so important step.
And so in that evaluation of those business needs, it's really, it's thinking about where are the gaps? And in order for you to find out where the gaps are, it's really important for you to think about where you are today.
Right.
And so, and you do this a lot with your clients. Where am I today? Who do I have on my team today? Mm-hmm. What needs are they filling today? And where are the gaps?
Yeah.
Right. And making sure also that you're looking at your processes to make sure you're efficient.
Right.
Again, not adding that body just for the sake of adding the body.
Right.
And it's looking at two things. So you're looking at the skills. Mm-hmm. So what are those competencies, the job requirements, any licensing that you might be needing. But then it's also, like you said, the fit, and that's related to the behaviors. What types of attitudes and values do these individuals have? That's a little touchier, harder to
It's harder to assess, but it's a really, really key part to making the whole engine work, right? Yeah. I know we've done some exercises with you on personality, and I think it was eye-opening to our team to say, oh, I didn't know you thought that way, or, oh, that's actually a very complimentary skill. You could see where Sean and I were very opposites or where Jalal and I were similar. It was very eye-opening exercise, but you're right. When you're interviewing somebody for a new position or adding on to your team, making sure you're paying attention to those skills is a really key part.
Exactly.
Reminds me of that. Many years ago, I saw that quote, like, you hire for attitude, you can always teach skill. Yeah. But obviously there are some licenses and degrees, Tanya, as you mentioned, that you obviously need to have if you're recruiting. But attitude is very important. Behavior is very important. The work ethic of the individual that's coming on board or the one that you want to interview is quite critical in my opinion.
Any tips you would think, like, how do you draw that component out?
Yeah. It's tricky because, again, it's not something you can evaluate in a job application, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get these types of information from a paper. And that's why, sometimes you say, well, they looked really good on paper. And then you got them in front of you and it was a little bit different. So that's where the interviewing comes into play. So you want to prepare for your interviews and make sure that you're drawing out from your candidates those types of behaviors.
Right.
And it might be questions around, give me an example where you weren't provided much guidance and you had to complete a task.
Right.
So that forces them to think back to an actual live example of where they needed to problem solve.
Right.
And figure things out with not a lot a lot of direction.
Right.
Asking questions around how they learn.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I've never been asked that. How do you learn? I've never ever been asked that. Yeah.
So if you had a new task to take on, what process do you take to be able to make sure that you're grasping the content?
Yeah, I'm gonna write that one.
How do you
learn? I like that one a lot because there's a lot of research that shows that the way individuals learn heavily influences their behavior and their level of cognition. So it's actually a really interesting one.
It also allows you as a manager, I guess, when you've got your business, your business owner, but you're also play the manager role, to be able to make sure that you're fostering the learning that is most adaptive to the person that you choose, right? So if they say, well, I learn by doing, you don't want to send them a webinar or give them a book to learn because that won't be their preferred way.
Right.
Well, the other tricky thing too is navigating the work from home, as a new employee, how are you onboarding somebody too, right? Exactly. Because are they doing online trading by themselves? Are they shadowing somebody? In some cases, not anymore because they are at home. Yes. And then sometimes you're interviewing over, virtual means. I remember, Joel, you're the newest member of our team, but it's been over a year now. But I remember one of the things we noticed was your bookshelf. It was nice and organized, and I went, he looks like an organized kind of guy. Like little things like that actually stood out.
Actually, interesting you say that because a glance at an individual's personal life would probably most likely mirror, like his professional life or his professional ethic would most likely mirror, what's in his personal. So maybe even asking questions, as you mentioned, I don't know, maybe something not obviously too personal. It'd be inappropriate in an interview, but just something to get some character, I guess, out of the individual, some behavior out of the individual. Sounds pretty legit.
Things like, what do you do in your free time? Give me some examples of your hobbies. Tell me a little bit more about yourself without actually there are rules that you have to be aware of about questions you can't ask, right? So tell me a little bit more about yourself. Keeps it broad enough that you're not drilling into, do you have a family? Are you married? And those types of questions that aren't really.
Law firms are infamous for asking those kinds of questions.
Really? Excellent. Great.
Well, thinking of other questions that are a little like out there too, like, sometimes when you ask the hobby question, you get the reading, hiking, spending time with family, and you're like, okay, just like everybody else. But to draw something out, sometimes thinking about your business and things, the characteristics of your business, where do you get your, ideas from or your inspiration from? Maybe finding out if there's a particular athlete they follow or author or things like that. You can draw some more information out of them that's a little more nuanced. Yeah,
like reading, maybe what do you read, right? If you like mystery books, then you're probably someone who's curious, somebody who's a little bit on the creative side. If you're nonfiction, right, it could point to the fact that you love reading about society, psychology, whatever it is. But I guess the type of reading actually also says a lot about the individual.
So drilling down a little bit, I think, is always instead of just the surface level stuff that often we get.
Yeah. And it might be just what's exciting you today. Like what's an exciting project you're working on today, or what are you looking forward to? There's several questions that you can just kind of get their frame of mind of where they're thinking and what are some of the things that are exciting them today.
So these are some tips on how to basically get some behavior or character out of the individual just to see if they're a good fit. But what are some tips previously you said you want to analyze your current business, where you are, where you want to be, and what gaps, what is required to get to where you want to be. And if you do require another individual, then obviously you want to go down the route of recruiting that individual. What are some tips as to whether business leaders or business owners can do to really look at that analysis or really go through that analysis to see what kind of expectations they require, I guess?
Expectations for the person you're going to hire, or the expectations
for their business
as a business? As a business.
Yeah.
Rightly so. There are, you want to be careful you don't have such high expectations that the person you're looking for doesn't even exist.
Of course. Yeah.
And so this is where you want to pull in your advisors, meaning like your colleagues, other people within your business, outside of your business, your network, being able to tap into other people within your network. Again, it comes down to, what size of business are you?
Right.
If you're just a one-man shop, then your resources are a little limited, but that doesn't mean that you can't reach out to other people that might also be business owners.
Right.
If you're a more established company where you have a human resource department or other lines of business within the business, then it becomes a little bit more of a possibility.
But I think your point to taking the time to look for those specific gaps and then to figure out what role and what qualities that person needs to have to fill it is an important step, instead of just saying, okay, we're short, we need somebody, slot somebody in. It's putting a little more thought into it.
Because I think that's what happened to a lot of tech companies I've been reading in the past couple of years. They overhired and now we're seeing mass layoffs. Obviously, some layoffs are in anticipation of a possible recession in North America and, Europe and maybe worldwide. But I was reading a lot of articles saying that tech companies just went on like a hiring spree in COVID, right? And I guess they overhired. And, back to your point where, and I think you mentioned it, Amy, as well, where if you hire now, if you realize you hire too much and you want to let go, now it not only affects, first of all, it's an awkward thing to do, no doubt, right? Like the emails that Elon Musk and Tesla were sending out, that's pretty hilarious. But it's also hard on the team, right? Because if now you're pulling you're pulling an individual out of the team where the other members were relying on this specific individual for specific tasks or whatnot. Now he or she's no longer available, right?
Yes.
So
it can change the morale.
It does, it changes the morale for sure. And you obviously create, I don't know, some kind of paranoia, maybe amongst other other employees as well, right?
So, and you bring up an interesting point about your team. Engage your team.
Yes.
Right. So they're involved in the day-to-day. They know what's required. They know what is a good fit. They know where their gaps are. So reach out to them, but don't lose the idea that there could be lack of efficiencies in the way you're doing things. Is there a better way for us to do this without actually adding a body?
Right.
Because there's that learning curve too that comes into play.
Oh, so you're suggesting that before you go on the endeavor of hiring an individual, see if whatever tasks you need or whatever gaps you have can be filled by the current team, and the current team being more efficient
reorganizing.
Reorganizing, using technology. Are there different ways we can do things? And that's again where you
again, somebody's on the team that's maybe stronger in a certain area where somebody's weaker, so maybe realigning certain tasks to fit as well.
The whole idea behind the personality,
right?
So I have a question for you, ladies. And in light of all this quiet quitting, and now there's a new thing called what is it called? I just read about it the other day. The Mondays where they do bare minimum Mondays now is quite it's quite a fab now on social media. So retention then Tanya, after you hire, after you've vetted the ideal candidate and you've hired the ideal candidate, how do you retain them? Because companies are having difficulties
keeping
retaining
them engaged.
Amy, you and I were talking the other day. I know your husband is a business owner, and you realize like companies are just headhunting other individuals from taken from each other and
to retain their talent.
Exactly. So what are some tips and suggestions you have, Tanya, for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. You want to be careful when you are interviewing or drawing out those behavioral qualities that you also understand motivators.
Right.
If you're dealing with an individual who's like, that's all that matters is money, 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 money. If you don't meet their expectations, they're just going to go elsewhere.
Right.
So it's understanding those internal motivators, making sure you're clear with expectations. I know that seems straightforward, but at the end of the day, you need to be clear right up front what your expectations are for the first 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
And meet regularly with your candidate, right? And make sure you're setting them up for success.
Right.
And this could be having a buddy. It could be making sure that you do regular check-ins, actually something I recommend, right? To be able to, especially at the beginning when they're just kind of figuring things out, what can we do to better support you?
Yeah.
And then aligning the long term with their motivators. So if I have a motivation of continuous learning and I always want to continue moving in the organization and continue learning, are there some self-development or development courses they can do so that they see that there's a path for them and that this isn't just a job?
Right.
we see this actually a lot with our next generation in terms of not having a clear career path.
Yeah.
It's really important for our next generation to know what's ahead.
Yeah.
And being able to have that path.
Well, because what we've kind of observed, just looking at, you see a lot of younger folks, they get a job, and then it seems to be the trend of you talk to somebody, then you get another, you jump for the pay, you jump for the pay, you do that every, year or two. I remember, I sound like an old lady now, but we used to be like, you want to have this longevity and loyalty on your resume. But now you look at resumes, it's 1 to 2 years, and then they jump 1 to 2 years and jump. Mm-hmm. But then they hit a plateau. Yeah. And I don't think they realize what that plateau is. It's you actually have to stay with an organization and grow within the organization to get to that next big leap. Mm-hmm. And so I think, to your point, if you're a business owner, how do you show them that path? And then on a consistent basis, remind them of that.
Yes. Yeah.
To show them that vision, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. We underestimate the power of that.
Yeah.
And it's showing them how to get there too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just pie in the sky, but these are the things that we're going to expect from you if you want to move to that level.
Yeah.
I have one last question, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
It was a question posed by, I saw one time by an HR manager on LinkedIn, and it was a good question, in my opinion. I don't even know the answer to it. I think he didn't post the answer. He was basically just getting suggestions, but basically he went like this. So a company A hires individual X, right? Now, of course, company A expects from individual X certain expectations, but they also, as you mentioned in the retention process, where you support the individual in terms of achieving his or her goals, whether growth, continuing education, whatnot, right? The question is, who steps up first, the company's responsibilities to the employee or the employee's expectations towards the company?
Steps up first in what sense?
In terms of does the employee have to show the support for the company, and then the company will provide the support for his goals, or is it vice versa?
The chicken and the egg.
It's almost like the chicken and the egg problem. Yeah.
I actually think it's a partnership. So I wouldn't say it's one or the other, but it's a mutual understanding.
Right.
So I mentioned the 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then long term.
Yeah.
It's a co-creation. I like the word co-creation. We're co-creating beyond just the formal stuff.
Right.
Because the larger companies will have the formal onboarding. But what are the things that we can do to better support you in the way you learn?
Right.
Can be things like buddies, or like I said, the regular check-ins are important, making sure that they're actually seeing and being included in the process.
Right.
So to me, it's more of a co-creation.
So it's more of both of them meeting the others' expectations, the employee meeting the company's expectation, and the company obviously meeting the individual's expectation at the same time. It's not like one goes, of course, over time, there has to be co-creation, but the question was posed which one has to support first?
Yeah.
Most of, obviously, on LinkedIn, because most of them are employees, they were answering that we expect our company to make sure that our values and our goals are at least we're on the process of those goals before I'm going to worry about my company's goals. I want to see first that they're worried about me and my person, right, and myself before I start worrying about their self.
Yes.
Whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's just a question that was posed.
Yeah.
I found it an interesting question.
Yeah.
It's valid, but again, it comes back to making sure the employee's goals are aligned with the company's goals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, essentially that's that sense of contribution.
Right. Right.
And if there's no sense of contribution and my goals are misaligned with the company's goals, it's going to be really hard.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's going to be hard to be able to fulfill both at the same time.
Gotcha.
Well, you want people, you spend an awful lot of time working. You want to make sure you're in a place that you enjoy, that again, has that partnership where you feel engaged day to day versus clocking in and clocking out. That sounds like a really sad way to spend a lot of hours. So if you have a business owner that's engaging you and interesting, you've found some real magic and you can really create some good opportunities.
I always remember, you guys remember that who was that really famous actor in the 1920s Charlie
Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin. If you remember, his skits of the factory work, and he was just there 8 hours a day, putting the exact same screw in the exact same hole. I just remember all that all the time. So when you mentioned the clocking in, clocking out, and just
Same.
I just remembered that was such a funny skit. But, yeah.
Well, thank you, Tanya.
Yes.
I think that was very helpful. And we always appreciate the business coach perspective. And if you're a business owner, it never hurts to get somebody else engaged to take another look at things with a fresh set of eyes. So
and you know what? If it's over your head as a business owner, don't hesitate to outsource.
No,
if you need to outsource, there are people that do this on a full-time basis. You don't have to become recruiters. You can actually go out and find some resources that can help.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tanya.
Thanks again.
Thanks,
Until
everyone.
next time.